Welcome, curious wanderers, to Skeleton Sounds, Ghosts of Theatreland.
So, we are now down a piano.
Well, I didn't drop it.
It was an accident.
You could have killed me.
We're poltergeists. We're not even human.
Will you both shut it?
We could steal another from the National.
No, too risky. They've doubled their security since we were last there. Just go and work on the time machine.
Time machine?
Yeah, how do you think I burnt down the original Globe Theatre?
At least it wasn't the Great Fire of London.
No. That was my cousin.
A few moments later.
Welcome, my theatrical ghouls and macabre spectators. I'm Skeleton Sam, your host for this episode. We're going to be exploring the theatres around the UK that have gained a reputation in the housing of souls still clinging to this mortal coil. Coming up for this week's chapter, we'll be travelling to Southend-On-Sea in Essex, England, to explore one of its oldest theatres and one of its most haunted. This is the Palace Theatre Southend. Opened in 1912, the Palace Theatre was originally called the Palace of Varieties, before it was renamed as the New Palace in December of that year. It was built to offer the public both a cinema and a vaudeville-style music hall. Over the years, it struggled financially, going through a number of owners, trustees, the local council, and then, at one point in the early 1930s, it was turned into a cinema completely. The Palace Theatre continued to operate throughout the decades against hard financial pressures. Well, the Great Depression and Wall Street crash for one, the air raids during the Second World War, the 2008 financial crisis, COVID, and, well, still a load more. But it continues throughout all these hardships to serve its local community, playing host to national tours, local theatre groups, educational and charitable events, music groups, comedians, panto, and much more.
I remember seeing an Amdram production of Sweeney Todd there a couple of years ago. Really well done. As was the touring production of Woman in Black. Proper theatre.
I like it more when Dick and Dom visited it. Or Snotty. Gary Barlow was alright.
Anyway, because of the extensive history surrounding this building, it has unfortunately also played host to a number of deaths, particularly in its early years, which has led to several paranormal experiences. What's that?
Dinner?
Dinner? We're about to go into the next part.
But I made this tikka masala.
Andi, this is kind of important.
What about dessert?
Well, I suppose there's room for dessert.
And coffee.
All right, a quick cup of coffee. Then we talk about the Palace Theatre ghosts.
I'm Frederick Lauren, and I've rented the house on Haunted Hill tonight so that my wife can give a party. A haunted house party. She's so amusing. There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited. If any of you will spend the next 12 hours in this house, I'll give you each $10,000. Or your next of kin in case you don't survive. Ah, but here come our other guests.
A good cup of coffee. Anyway, so, the Palace Theatre is over 113 years old. Its history, as I mentioned in the previous section, is one of many trials and tribulations, adapting and surviving with the times. And there has of course been a few accidents. Various accounts have attributed more than one ghost that is said to haunt this venue. Throughout the building, from the orchestra pit all the way to the gallery, the sound of phantom footsteps, a mysterious smell of cigarettes, garlic and talcum powder, don't ask me why, have been smelt. A piano being played in the orchestra pit when the space is empty, strange lighting phenomena, and empty seats suddenly being occupied by invisible forces, along with several strange apparitions seen by audience and members of staff, the latter of which I've gained written statements from those staff members who've experienced all these strange events. Mick, the statements.
Anything else?
Nope, all good.
Whatever. I'm going to the pub.
Oh yeah, on your way back from the pub, would you mind picking up a meal for me, say a succulent Chinese meal? Anyway, our first witness statement comes from a member of the front of house staff who respectfully wishes to remain anonymous. In their statement, they described working one night in the theatre's gallery seating area in the main auditorium, and as they were walking down the stairs from the gallery after the interval of the show that was on had just finished, they saw in the corner of their eye a male figure walking up to where they had come from. This figure seemed to appear out of nowhere and didn't cross paths with the front of house assistant on the stairs, who was thinking of saying something but decided to wait until later on as the show had started. They checked to see if this strange male figure could have entered through another door on the stairs that's only accessible to theatre staff. But they saw that the door was locked, so the only way he could have come up to the gallery was by going up the stairs and crossing paths with the front of house assistant. After the show had finished, the front of house assistant grabbed a rubbish bag and decided to go back up to the gallery by going up the dress circle staircase. As they walked up the stairs, the mysterious man from before appeared again, and this time was coming down the dress circle staircase and passing them. They quickly turned around to look at the man, but saw that he had vanished. The front of house staff member said there was no way this individual could have gotten out of sight that quickly. One thing that the front of house member noted from this strange experience was that there was a calming feeling instead of one that most cases leaves a person experiencing in a paranormal phenomenon, that being feeling cold and scared. The next staff statement from the Palace Theatre Southend comes from a member of the front of house who had no problem in us sharing their name and identity, nor are they uncomfortable in discussing the wide range of strange phenomenon that they encountered there in the many years they've worked. Vivian Mitchell, a kindly proper East End lady who several years ago retired from living in London to come and live in Southend-On-Sea. She's worked now at the Palace Theatre for nearly 10 years and is a very down-to-earth and rational sort of individual. Throughout the many shifts that she's worked there, she's encountered the feeling of strange presences when being in areas where there was no one else about. Physical contact from invisible forces. Extreme temperature drops in parts of the dress circle, and, like our previous front of house assistant, experienced full-blown apparitions within the theatre's auditorium and in the gallery section. The first strange experience she had was working one night as an usher in the gallery. During her shift, as she was making her way up the stairs 10 minutes before the doors opened to, open the door to let audiences into the gallery and to check the tickets, she was climbing the stairs. Climbing and climbing. There was nothing strange or untoward, until suddenly, out of nowhere, she felt somebody push her in the back. Turning around in response, she noticed that there was no one there and initially just put this down to her imagination playing tricks. Then, she put her hands on the stair railing on the wall next to her, and as she did so, she noticed that it was loose and shaking. Quickly, she radioed to management because if that stair rail came loose and fell off as somebody was using it to climb, they could seriously hurt themselves. But when a technician came up to check, they found that it was still attached to the wall and incredibly sturdy. This was strange because, it was loose and shaking uncontrollably beforehand. The next strange incident occurred many months later in the Christmas period of that year. Vivian was again working as an usher in the gallery of the auditorium. And on this occasion, her husband was watching the show that she was ushering for, sitting in the gallery and being very close to the back area. Now, just before the curtain went up and the show started, Vivian went outside to check if anyone else was coming up the stairs before she closed the doors to the auditorium. In the interval of the show, her husband came up and asked, "Was that strange woman one of the actors?" Confused by this, she asked what he meant by it. In his statement, he explained that whilst Vivian had gone outside to quickly check if anyone was coming up the stairs, in the other door on the other side of the gallery, a woman came through those doors and walked across the back of the gallery. She was wearing an old-fashioned dress, very 19th century Victorian style. Vivian then said that would be impossible because, one, nobody passed her while she was outside, and no actors could come through that door because it was locked. And, most important of all, no actors went through the gallery on either shows. This naturally left Vivian and her husband feeling just a little bit spooked. Vivian's account of paranormal experiences is so incredibly detailed, and this next key event is highly important because it features not one, not two, but multiple witnesses, including potential photographic evidence. This incident occurred not too long ago, as during the local children's youth theatre project, some of the kids involved asked who the lady was that was watching them. Vivian and other members of staff said that there wasn't a lady, but the kids insisted they kept seeing her watching them in one of the private boxes near the stage. Management assured them that there was no one in the theatre that day. This mysterious woman, often wearing a long white dress, would once again be spotted during the run of, rather appropriately, a ghostly themed stage production, where Vivian was this time sitting as a member of the show's audience along with her husband. She noticed in the corner of her eye someone in one of the boxes. Getting a proper look, she said it was the woman in a white dress standing in the box with her hand on the chair. Vivian continued to look, noticing that every time the lights went up, she disappeared. But when it went dark again, she would appear. Nudging her husband to look up to the private box, he also described seeing a woman in a white dress standing up with a hand on a chair. But the thing that shocked Vivian was that she never described the details of the woman, but he perfectly described what she had seen before him. This apparition in the private box has continued to be spotted by both staff and audiences alike, and was even caught on camera as seen in this copy of the Southend Echo. The identities of the Palace Theatre's resident ghosts are shrouded in mystery, but there are some clues as to who they could be. One person believed to haunt the theatre is named George, and well, how he became a ghost is something that has many stories, but in the most prominent one that was featured on a BBC Sounds documentary about haunted theatres, they said that George was a construction worker working at the Palace Theatre as it was being built. And one day, a very terrible accident occurred that caused George to fall from the flies or the dress circle during the construction, and, well, he later died in hospital. Another account says that he was a former manager of the theatre that, due to financial difficulties after the building's opening in 1912, hung himself. Either way, it's his ghost that is reported to be sometimes sitting next to patrons during performances, as they claim to have felt someone take up position next to them, though the entity remains invisible while seated. Also, in different parts of the theatre, there would be the phantom smell of Holborn tobacco. Going back to this BBC Sounds documentary I mentioned, it was hosted by an actor called Jack Shepherd, who, a few years ago, was doing a run of Charles Dickens' ghost story, The Signalman, and they played at the Palace Theatre. At the start of the production, things were going wrong. Lights stopped working, props flew across the stage by themselves, and one day, Jack Shepherd's co-actor got up before the run and said aloud, "George, will you please stop it?" To which the ghost appeared to listen and stop, which allowed them to have a successful rest of the run. Now, the woman in white and the lady in the old-fashioned dress in the gallery, well, their identities are still a mystery. But with a building this old and rich in history, I can imagine that, well, if you're going to haunt a theatre, might as well be a theatre by the seaside, eh? And that is the end of this series. We hope you've enjoyed and learned a bit about history, myths and folklore around various theatres said to contain paranormal residents. We'll be back in the near future, looking at international theatres and returning to some we've covered before. So do share this series with your friends, your family, and even your enemies that may like a good spooky tale. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, and stay up to date. See you very soon.